broadband investment, wireless deployment, 4G, and now 5G. After 3 years leading one of the business units in Telefonica, I fall in love with a startup, a healthcare startup called U.S.A. These guys at that time were so crazy because there were only 3 people just trying to convert an app into a hearing aid. So the first time I heard it was, wow, it should be like a game challenge to convert any smartphone into a tool to help people with hearing loss. So from that time, was almost 5 years, I was in charge, I am in charge of the strategic expansion of the company. We started from 3 people, now we are 20. Our next goals are also going to Latin America very deep. With this COVID situation, was a game changer for us, and I think most of the companies in South America. That's why I found very interesting this discussion with all the community now here. Also I'm very focused on healthcare topics. I work with the World Economic Forum in Global Shapers community. I'm in charge of the healthcare unit in Argentina. Part of that, I'm expert in the biotech network that we are evaluating and monitoring lots of startups in Europe related with biotech.
Great. Well, maybe I can go in the meantime. So after this amazing introduction by Gonzalo, my name is Petia. I am originally from Bulgaria. Actually, I lived most of my life in the United States, in California and New York as well. I graduated from school there, so I worked for the top 10 independent film sales company as my first job out of college. But I basically specialized in sales and marketing. So I just specialized in that area, but went through a few different industries until I got to the one where I am right now. So I started with independent film. It was amazing. It was great. And then I worked for Young and Rubicon as well, the advertising agency in New York. And so I've gotten to work with some very large clients around the world with the very different types of profiles. And then I came to Europe, where ironically, I came across the technology industry a lot, and also the smaller startup scene. And so for the past 4 years, I've been working in startups which have had the sort of this common factor of also like Gonzalo. I started with the companies when they were only 3 or 4 people, and then we just kept growing. One of them is a company called Mailjet. It's an email service provider. It's very big in Europe, not so much in the United States yet, but they grew and they recently got sold to MailChimp for a good amount of money. And so I'm currently basically in the position where I work for a very small startup in Vienna, Austria, called Kaleido. It's an artificial intelligence company which focuses solely on visual AI. And so we started with just myself and the 2 co-founders in August, and currently we're up to almost 20 people.
Awesome.
So I guess I should realize that I have to unmute myself so as to be able to talk as well. So thank you, Petia and Gonzalo, for your introductions. And sorry about that little bit of a mess up. George, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hello, everyone. George Kuruvilla, based out of Chicago. Alex and I, Dinu and I went to high school together in Dubai. So I spent the first 10 years of my life in India. Then I spent the next 8 to 10 years in Dubai, and the last 18 years or so I've been in the U.S., mainly in Chicago. My background is engineering, so I have a master's in electrical engineering, but as most of us, you get your master's in something and you end up doing something totally different. So I'm very much a techie, but what I'm doing right now is more focused on a blend of technology and sales. So I currently work for a company called Citrix Systems, and our mission really is to empower the future of work. And it's actually pretty timely that in this pandemic, a lot of people are kind of seeing our vision, what we've been talking for many, many years, kind of play out. So it's been pretty awesome just to see this thing happen. So I'm a pre-sales global strategist for Citrix. So in that capacity, I work as their field CTO. So I engage with some of our largest and most strategic accounts, a handful. And in addition to that, I also drive or influence product management and development for our products. So that's kind of my background. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I'm great to be here.
Thank you all, and thank you, George. Thanks for mentioning that we were in class together as well. I've known George for a while, and I've been getting to know Petia and Gonzalo as well through a course that we're taking with Howard Business School. Again, for those who just popped up right now, Barbara could not make it. She sends her deepest regrets, and essentially we're just changing and evolving our conversation as we go through things in the next little while. So let's get to the gist of this, because a lot of us have wondered, about what if something like this could ever happen in a situation, but we never thought that we would be the ones going through it. We've always thought about it, and really that's what we're really trying to focus around here. So I think the first question, I put the question up for people to see as well as to what we're trying to understand here is, tell us a little bit about how your organization reacted to the pandemic without truly knowing its impact. Like the first day that you knew that this pandemic was coming through, how did you react off the bat?
So I can start. I mean, it's a tricky situation. So you said it yourself. No one ever thinks something like this can happen, and obviously there were a lot of myths going around when this thing just first blew up. So in our case, what was happening is like suddenly, I feel like the first reaction was denial, and it was all about like watching the news and discussing it. So little by little, it just became like the topic of the day. But there wasn't really like a clear reaction that would force us to do something. There wasn't even like a way, there wasn't even like an addressing of the situation. And I think that's very normal. I think in the beginning, it was just because suddenly it was just something so far away from us that we didn't realize how fast it just became part of our reality. And so at one point, the discussions were becoming so overwhelming that that's all we were talking about at work. And we realized there wasn't anything being taken to confront the situation. And I just basically raised the situation to the CEO. I told him, look, even though there isn't anything right now that is official telling us that we need to be taking measures, we need to at least address this internally so that our employees can feel like we actually are acknowledging the situation. And so we did that. And I think that's just one like really good take away from this is a lot of these kind of situations could happen, but just being able to address them, I think gives the employees a sense of, okay, this is happening. We don't know what we're doing, but we're going to be confronting this as soon as possible, and we're going to be communicating with you. And so in that sense, what I noticed was as soon as we communicated with our team, productivity level was a lot higher. People weren't just speculating what was going on. It felt like there was control of the situation, and we basically discussed it internally, and then we gave an option to all of our employees to work from home until there was further discussion. And this was way before we even had any kind of guidelines from the government to stay home and like the lockdown. So there was like a little bit of a gap between that, and so that's what I noticed. This was the initial reaction basically on our end.
Great, I can go next. I kind of hinted on this, right? So in terms of the solution or our solution in the market, it's essentially allowing people to work from anywhere. So we are roughly 8,000 and change in terms of the number of employees, and we are global. And most of us in general tend to work from home. So if you look at our work environment, typically we're given a stipend, we go buy a device of our choice, and then our application allows us to get whatever we need to get our work done. So in terms of how we reacted internally, there was honestly not a whole lot of change in terms of how we work. So, productivity, I wouldn't say was impacted a great deal. It was pretty much the same. I think the biggest change, honestly, was the fact that all of a sudden you had your kids at home. So, I've got 2 little kids. So, I'm used to working from home, but I'm not used to working from home, but also, figuring out what to feed them and also deal with their schoolwork. That took a little getting used to, but and that's what we saw across the board in our organization, right? So how the family all being together, all of a sudden new challenges arose in terms of just dealing with children and whatnot. And so what our organization did was they made a whole lot of really awesome policies where they gave us all funds to go buy ergonomic gear. They said that, hey, if you got to take time off, and it won't be counted towards your regular PTO. Take care of the family first. And just culturally, it was great to see how empathetic they were to the situation, right? So that made things a lot nicer. But being customer facing, my immediate concern was how do we deal with our customers and what their immediate issues. And healthcare is one of our biggest verticals. So, all of the essential workers that were impacted, that's what we had to address initially. So we got creative in terms of how we address licensing challenges, just making sure customers can get up and running. There are so many great stories to share in terms of, the COVID testing and whatnot, where we played a role. And it was just amazing to see what we were able to do. And also through the process, I think, it kind of validated our story around work not being a place and something that people should be able to do from anywhere, on any network, on any device. Because if that's your mentality towards work, a pandemic really doesn't come in the way, because, you don't have to go to an office to work. So, and people are now slowly realizing it. And you can kind of see messaging from Gartner and others that talk about the fact that they see 70% of organizations moving forward looking at remote work as a standard process, right? Whereby they see operational benefits in doing so. So it's in many ways, as bitter as this whole experience has been through this pandemic, there's been so many great lessons that we've learned as a company.
Thanks, George. Gonzalo, tell us what
happened. I'm totally agree with Petia and George. I think one of the most important challenges here was the team. Our team was 70% of the team is non-remote, so there are people with an office actually working there. I'm not the expert in the technology field, but most part of my technology team are very, very good at playing with each other. So it's like sports team. They know how to play, how to pass the ball, and in the office is the same environment. So when you put these people into their homes and working in remote areas with these families, with the challenges, the first thing that you have to consider is the mental health of them, how they are going to feel, how they're going to assist. This is crucial because you convert since a leader to a people that are very, very close to these people and almost a psychologist in terms of how we can improve your environment, how we can improve your actual challenge day by day in your home. That's what was, if not the main challenge that we have passed through all this process. And the second one was to realize that the new era or the new moment that we are living now is not only for us, it's also for our customers and our suppliers, that we are all in the same page. And that's crucial because maybe our customers, they are not going to be the same again. So it's very important in our case, the audiologists, when you consider all of these people, how they live, supposing that the thing that you have been working for 20 years, for 30 years, from one day to another, you cannot do it because you cannot be in contact with another people. So that's the pain of our customers. And actually now we are trying to fix it and to challenge them to go ahead.
Well, yeah, that's nice. I think you used the word new era. Is that like a new day for the new way of working or something like that? Is that?
Yeah, the new era is like the new time for the new reality could be.
Okay, yeah, that's a new word that I'm going to be like noting down because I think that's it just resonates with me. And I know a few of you just talked a little bit about productivity, and I know George, you said that productivity kind of has been the way it has been just because that's the way that you've been operating. But Petia, you've said things have gone up in terms of productivity. What do you think were the factors that contributed to it? Like in particular, Petia and Gonzalo.
So good question. So once we started working remotely, once we faced basically the challenges that we were facing, there was a very quick reaction on part of our management. They basically let us work from home. And the one thing, so like in the beginning, so that you have challenges that you have to get used to when you are completely working remotely. On one hand, as a employee, you have your entire home, like time at your house that you have to separate into different categories. And for me as a professional, for example, I do a lot of negotiations that are extremely important. So for me to get into work mode, I need my office. And it took me like psychologically from that perspective to sort of not only have the space in my house where I work, but sort of get up in the morning, get dressed, put makeup on, just do my routine that I would normally do to go to work in order to be in that role. Because believe it or not, we are not so aware of like all the roles that we play, you know, in society and work and like at home. And so you have all these things that you do, but when you put it all together, it's extremely challenging to actually like tackle all of this. And so there's a period of adoption, I think, that is very important to acknowledge. And I think all of our employees went through that as well, to where we were comfortable enough with our skin to focus on our jobs. And I think, so the first couple of weeks were, I think, were that like adjustment period. Although we were completely prepared to work remotely because there's nothing in our, in anyone in our office or our team that cannot work remotely. Like that's not a challenge. Like, there wasn't a specific technology we had to adopt. We have enough trust in each other where we know doesn't need to be like a supervision. So that's another added plus to where we knew the team would be putting in the work, but we also knew we would need that like adjustment period to fine tune like the right spot where you're in your skin when you're working, and just kind of divide your time. And so for me personally, I also ended up working overtime a lot. I would end up working like way more than what I would do in the office, because just like I just couldn't get away from it. And so I really had to structure my time to do that. And then I realized once I got into that mode that it actually would take me less time to do the tasks that I would be doing in the office, because I was structuring my time better. Because in the office, I really enjoy being there. So there's always like talking and there's always a good time. And there's that factor, which I really love. It's the social part of it, which that's why we love the office, right? And I'm lucky enough to have amazing colleagues. But that's basically what was taking that away. So once I was at home, I realized it was taking me a lot less to finish particular tasks. And normally the way I work is I have goals for the day, what I need to finish, to prioritize. And so I would basically like put out specific hours. So for this hour, I'll do this hour. And I did end up being a lot more efficient and finishing a lot more work that way. But then I had to get into the skin of the people that I was managing as well. And I realized also there was a big gap in terms of, so once you are not in the office, your natural connection with your colleagues is gone. Like the jokes, the subtleties. So it's very much easier sometimes to misinterpret people. So that became really clear because you don't have the person in front of you. and we really all are very connected on like a social level. So that was really missing. So we established basically a virtual coffee breaks where we didn't talk about work. We just basically like goofed off and did giffies online and just like really just made fun of like the whole situation. So that like half an hour twice a week really helped our like team be like, oh yeah, look, I'm the same person. It just like I'm on, you know, I'm on screen. So like that, I feel like that really brought us together and it helped us be more focused and besides productive, but like I think just to make up for the social connection that wasn't happening there.
Thank you for that.
One last thing is like we actually added 3 or 4 people since lockdown, and they've all been onboarded virtually. So it ended up working perfectly.
Gonzalo, would you like to add something to that?
Well, I'm totally agree with the social connection. I believe that today more important than sales and break even, and of course being alive. That is the main challenge of one of my CFO. And we need like a new chief happiness officer, I think now, because people started to rethink some things about their values. I'm totally agree with Petia that if we are people that are leading or in charge of some people and ourselves have these some challenges, why any kind of our teams cannot have them? So totally agree that the next year we should be more focused on people more than ever. So
that's good, because you're kind of starting to go down this pathway, which is my next question for all of you, is around employee, in terms of the employees who are our greatest assets, and what have you and your company done to ensure health and safety for your employees? Petia, you want to go first?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, we're not in the office at all, but so there's nothing there that we needed to do except, you know, we had to, if anyone had it was really important that we kept the office open in case someone needed to go there, because we realized mental health was the #1 priority, not so much other things, because we were already working remotely. So we would encourage employees to basically follow all guidelines on one hand, so they can be physically safe and avoid any kind of danger. So we would keep reminding that. We would have actually, we added a channel because we use Slack for communication. So I think picking, first of all, the right tool for your team is crucial to where you know like what works for you. So for us, Slack works very well. And so we added a channel that was specifically for that topic. And so we would encourage employees to basically follow guidelines and to ask questions. So that was important. But then in terms of like mental health, I think that was the biggest concern for us. And just staying connected with our team members. For example, we had a team, we have a team member who is in a different country. And so he actually reached out to me, and I think because he was just sort of feeling down. And so I made sure that we have basically regular talks with him so that he can stay on point, where he was having troubles basically fulfilling specific tasks in a timely manner because he was just really mentally not there. And so we just took that as a great sign that we need to really face this, because none of us have experience with something like this. But you imagine that, you know, someone like this would need like sort of smaller steps to feel that they're progressing. And so paying attention to how, because people are different, I think, so they would respond differently. Most of us, you know, wouldn't be so impacted in terms of, you know, mental health, but there are people who are more susceptible. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that and go case by case and make sure that just be in touch with your employees. I think make sure that they know you're there for them, and especially if they express the concern that they're not doing so well, find ways to help them feel connected with the rest of the team. Because in these times, some people are alone at home, for example. So there's just a lot of different factors. And so I think that's the biggest thing that that helped, you know, that particular employee, and what I feel like we did a really good job with that, because he's doing great.
How about Citrix? George, I know this thing has been, like you probably guys have something in place, but now with the pandemic in place, how did this affect?
Yeah, so we talked about technology being one of the aspects. I think that we had handled for the most part, but obviously there were so many other challenges. I think Petia touched on a number of them, right? So we use Slack too. I mean, we use a few tools, but Slack is probably our main tool to keep in touch with our colleagues. So Slack went on overdrive, and we had, just like Petia's organization had, we had multiple channels dedicated to COVID. I think the biggest thing that we all realized is our leadership showed empathy, right? So right from the get-go, even before lockdown was mandatory, what our leadership said is, hey, it's totally up to you guys. Don't feel pressure to come to the office. And then once the lockdown was enforced, obviously at that point we were asked to work from home. And then they gave us small things that go a long way, right? To give 8,000 employees $1,000 and say, hey, go buy ergonomic gear, just out of the blue. I mean, that speaks volumes, right? So they did that. And then they decided that, no need for any internal travel for the rest of the year. Extended PTO time. So about mental health, they had this, I've not done this, but there's some meditation hour or something during lunch breaks where we actually have people who are going to, guide people through meditation. So all sorts of great initiatives by our leadership to make sure that everybody feels safe, everybody feels connected, just showing that they really care. So I also feel like the virtual, I think, Petia, you mentioned the virtual happy hour. So we have that too. So one of the unique situations that we have is because of a lot of our employees being remote, it's not like we go into an office regularly. Obviously, there's parts of our organization that do go into an office, but most of us don't. And so, you could have extended periods, 6 months, a year, sometimes before you see members of your team. Thanks to COVID now, we have regular virtual happy hours. And, we used to have team meetings before, but no one would turn on the camera. So you'd be on a call, I'd be doing something, somebody else would be doing something else. No one was really focused. Thanks to this whole notion of COVID and turning your webcams on, the interaction has gone to a whole new level. I feel much more connected with my team. I think even on a personal level, we are much more, there's more bonding going on. Not only that, a lot of our leaders show up on our calls. So, leadership is much more approachable now, which is amazing, right? So, I run a podcast in my company. So I was talking to one of our executive vice presidents yesterday, and he was telling me that thanks to COVID, he now knows his extended team way more than he ever did before. Just because he says that the reason why certain meetings seem exclusive, it's not because they want to keep it exclusive. It's because of other limitations. Maybe there's travel involved. Maybe the meeting room's small. Now, because everything's remote, there are those barriers have been removed. So he doesn't mind inviting his extended team. And so, the interaction has actually improved a great deal. So the morale in some ways has improved as well internally within the team. Now, in terms of, when you talk about health and stress, one of the big issues I think that all of us deal with, I'm sure you guys do too, is because we are working from home, you wake up, and Petia, you touched on a very good point, which I could totally relate to. I like to get up in the morning, get ready, and go to work. And that what I mean by that is my basement's my office. So I'll get in, I have to dress up, I have to sit in front of my computer, and I have to be isolated. That's how I work. I mean, I have to feel like it's a different zone. So, because it's at home now, we'll wake up 7:45. I'm in front of my computer, and then because everybody else knows that you're home and in front of a computer, they just schedule meeting after meeting after meeting, to the point where from 7:45 to 6 p.m., if I let it happen, I'll be in meetings, right? So that can be draining, and it can, wear you down. Not only that, if you're in meetings all day, when do you do your actual work, right? So that's the other challenge that you have. So, there has, there has to be some balance there. And I've been doing things like blocking time off for lunch, because I've realized that if I don't block time off for lunch, I probably won't have lunch till 4 p.m. So, I had to get a little creative there, and that definitely has added a little bit to my physical and mental stress. But I'm trying to counter that by getting creative, whether that's just blocking off time, or just getting up and going for a walk, or making sure no matter what, I'm sleeping 8 hours and not missing meals. Like all of these things, you have to kind of be conscious. And I think also having somebody else kind of keep a check on you, right? So you, among your peers, you have responsibility towards them, and they have a responsibility towards you. And so there's no shame in asking somebody or confiding in somebody to like kind of just keep you in check in that process. The other thing that I've seen as far as physical and mental health is more so, I would say just an emotional connection. I've done a lot more mentoring now. So because I'm not traveling as much, my regular schedule meant that I'm traveling almost every week. So I've got all this extra time now that I gain back because I'm not traveling. So I dedicate that time to invest in others. So I connect with junior resources, and I spend time just an hour a week with 2-3 of them, just listening to their career progressions and just other issues, and just kind of being a sounding board. And I think that's rewarding both ways, right? Because it's obviously rewarding for them, but it's also rewarding for you. And one of the things I've realized is it actually helps me in my mental health. Like I feel like I'm doing some good, and that in turn helps me as well. So those are kind of the aspects. Just to summarize, right? I think empathy from our leadership was a big one. Just being creative in terms of how, because you're working from home, how you kind of manage your time, just making sure that you allocate time so that you take your physical well-being into account. And then just making sure that you're connected. There are a lot of positives out of this whole episode that you should remember once the crisis is over, that you carry forward in your processes and methodologies.
So before I get to Gonzalo, I really have to chime in on a few of the things, because I'm a one-person organization, and so having to be a parent, and I know you talked a little bit about this. I've had to homeschool my son Caleb through the process and run and actually kickstart a business on its own. So Petia and Gonzalo can relate to this quite a bit, because I came with a deliberate strategy of this is what I needed to do in terms of starting my business. I had to like completely disrupt everything in terms of how we were operating and do things. And so mental health played a huge impact on a lot of these things, because it has been a significant change in the way that I've had to operate. I know businesses here in Edmonton and Canada have had to operate. And Joe and Sandy, who are participants on this call as well, Sandy actually had a presentation yesterday about mental health, and especially dealing with kids and understanding the kids through the process as well. So there's been a lot of activities that has been happening across the globe in terms of providing that. George, you touched a little bit on the personal connection component. I think when you and I were chatting, one of our things we said was, it's been 25 years since I've met some of my classmates, and I've like people that I've never seen since 1995. Those are the people that I'm connected with today. My cousins out in Calgary do Zumba, which is essentially trying to get the whole family up and jumping and doing things like that. So it's been a great personal connectivity in as well as a professional connectivity. So I just felt that I needed to chime in a little bit and share that. Gonzalo, I'm not going to take up your time, but please tell us about how things have been on your end.
Well, in terms of the resources, well, we tried, we are a small team, so for us, it's easier to deliver some tools and ideas. For example, we create a Google Docs. I can share with you if you want, where we can put like the top apps for meditation and, for example, for sleeping well. We are trying to combine this with with mobile apps. Just is our resource. When we started to talk with the whole team, every one of them has some ideas. So the result of this is, for example, people that didn't know how to do yoga or meditation started to look on these apps. So they started to do it, and their feedback is, wow, it's the first time in my life, people with 30 years old, and the first time they do meditation or yoga. For example, this year was the first time I did yoga. So it's a new thing that I can learn from all this process. No, one of the main thoughts that I was taught in this period is what are the new skills or the new challenges that you are going to achieve after the COVID. For example, I was trying to point out that after the COVID, with the Harvard Business School course online, for me, it's a good example. After 1 month, that you have the opportunity to be more focused on things from your home, to be like to give more attention, to stay more close to the topics. Maybe it's a good point. The network experience, a yoga lesson. Maybe you are more flexible now. Maybe you are more healthier, or maybe not. It's your own decision. But from their company view, also when you are small people, more a family or a group of friends that a work team, you should try to combine them or to help them to say, after the COVID, it's your own decision if you want to be a better person or the same person. But maybe like leaders, we can help them to achieve that goal.
So I'm going to start with George on this because easier to say is like we've seen governments come with different ideas, different levels of government have different things in place, and usually companies are not necessarily prepared for all these things. So did Citrix have a business continuity or crisis response plan? Tell us a little bit about an overview. I know you've touched a little bit, but get us into a little bit more on what this plan looked like and how important was this plan for you?
Yep. So before I get into that, I wanted to touch on something that you touched. You talked about your classmates and connecting with them after a long time. So I graduated from undergrad in 2002, and the first time that I actually had a call with my gang loosely, like 10 of us that were close, was due to COVID. Now, thanks to COVID, we have a monthly call where we all get together and just bond. Again, that wouldn't have happened had it not been for COVID. So kind of funny how that works out. Regarding business continuity, I don't think I want to focus so much on Citrix because I think I kind of mentioned that our business continuity is just what we do on a regular basis. I mean, there was obviously other challenges in terms of personnel and physical and mental health. We've touched on all that, but in terms of the way we do work, that hasn't really changed. So I want to talk more about customers because I think, let's talk about different verticals and, what I'm seeing, right? And you see certain themes. The first theme that you see is most people are on a journey as far as business continuity goes, right? So normally when you do a project, so like normally when let's say my enterprise architects go out to a customer and plan out a solution, business continuity is one of the aspects of every project, but a lot of customers tend to disregard that. They're like, hey, you know what, this can wait, we'll do it later, right? And so now that, thanks to COVID, now they're realizing that, hey, no, we have to take this thing seriously. So there's a new sense of urgency as far as business continuity goes. I really hope it sticks because we've been through this in the past where you go through a crisis, customers feel the need, and then 6 months down, they forget all about it. But I think this time it's here to stay. So business continuity is something that everybody thinks about, but with different levels of priority. So when I look at my customers and the maturity curve, I would say majority of customers were ill-prepared for this crisis, right? So they hadn't really thought about, they had some framework, right? They'll be like, okay, I'm going to give my users laptops and maybe they're going to have some VPN connection and everything should be okay. But then they didn't really think about what happens if this is an all-out lockdown and people truly can't get. And that brought up all sorts of interesting challenges. I would say a very small percentage, less than probably 15% of customers were really ready. And I'm talking, enterprise level customers that are truly 100% ready for this crisis. Now, among the ones that were not ready, one of the things that people, or rather like one of the trends that I noticed, right? I'm sure all of you are aware that there's this notion of public cloud and, SaaS-based applications and whatnot. And most customers, while they're all in that digital transformation journey, were not quite there, right? Or they were like kind of, kind of testing it out slowly, and maybe in the next 3 years I'll go somewhere. But thanks to COVID, what happened is a lot of customers could not, even if they wanted to buy additional infrastructure to support their end users, there was nowhere to get it from because the supply chain was broken, right? So they were forced to go down the public cloud, right? So now, because they were forced to go down the public cloud, they are now more receptive to using something like that moving forward. So now they are rethinking what the future of their infrastructure and solutions look like. So that's been a positive change. Now, but we also realize that even the public cloud is not this infinite pool of resources that's available. You probably saw news articles around how Azure was running short of resources, and many other. So we saw that aspect too. So I think in many ways, business continuity opened customers up to some new ideas that they were not open to doing before. Now, from an employee perspective, I know a lot of conservative enterprise customers that just didn't trust their employees to work from home. So it's almost like a taboo thing, right? So yeah, this job you really need to come into work, or you can't really do it properly. And now they were forced to do it, forced to empower their employees to work from home. And behold, guess what? Work's getting done still. And in many ways, they are more productive. They're actually getting more work done. I think, Petia, you touched on this. People are actually, I think even Gonzalo mentioned, so people are actually more productive now working from home. Granted, there are some other challenges, but so because of which employers are now more open to the concept of letting their workers work 2 or 3 days from home moving forward. And there's so many other benefits to this approach, right? So if you could think about real estate expenses, you can cut down that. Talent retention is another big one. Attracting talent globally. So think about call centers and things like that, where there's a high rate of attrition, right? You don't always find the best talent locally. You have to look elsewhere. So if you get to the model of working from home or remote work, you have a much larger talent pool, and maybe even in a more cost-effective manner. So it's a win-win. Employees happy. The OpEx, CapEx of enterprises goes down. So they're being open to that as well. So I think a net result of COVID is that customers will take business continuity more seriously. But more than business continuity, they will look at kind of tying business continuity into how they do work on a regular basis, such that business continuity is not this net new entity that you kind of put in this cage that you turn on only when there's an issue. Instead, it's a part of your everyday operation, such that if something were to go wrong, it's factored in. And so that mentality is changing, and hopefully it is here to stay moving forward, and we learn from this.
Hey, thanks, George. I know there's a few things that we want to get through as well. Gonzalo, can you tell us a little bit about what business continuity meant to you and to your company, and how it gives an overview of it?
Yeah, sure. Well, totally agree with George that first of all, you need to start thinking from the shoes of your customers, because the customers here in this process are the most affected by the COVID transition. So in terms of customers and new value for them, we created a plan. It's not just a plan, it's try to rethink if our products and services in this process of COVID and remote working still has a value. For example, in the audiologist field, our audiologists need to be in touch of their patients. Nowadays, with the COVID situation, it's not possible. So these people, these workers, cannot work from home. They are all already like 70% like Googling or going through Facebook or Instagram. So with our team, we started to think how the real value of these people now is taken. One of the ideas, of the out-of-the-box ideas, was to try to create new content generation process. So instead of selling of saying, well, I'm going to sell you an audiometer or a tool to diagnose hearing loss. I'm going to teach you how you can do it from your home, or I'm going to give you some tools. So when all this transition period of COVID ended, you are going to have, you are going to be more prepared than now. So with this all kind of trying to change the mindset, we started to create new positioning, our market and our brand. So this period is going to be from 2 to 3 months just of content generation and trying to combine them that they are going to stay more prepared. Meanwhile, we are also creating new sales and new sales channels. But the funnel is new, it's totally new than before the COVID. Before the COVID, we go directly to the customer, like in presential selling, or people come to the office and we go out there with through our distributor channels. And nowadays it's 100% remote. All the demos, the product demos, and the learning process is 100% remote. And this kind of changing of mindset, it's going to be like the new era that I say in the beginning. That's we're trying to combine them, that this the new reality and the new kind of working. As a third point, in terms of the business continuity of our company, the most important here is to be more focused on the expenses, on the cost structure. For example, our CFO, the first thing we said, okay, how many months we have of burn rate, how long we are going to go to the point of say, well, we are run out of money, and from that point to now, we say, okay, we have 9 months. In 9 months, we have to recover all this period in terms of cash cost optimization and new sales generation. So the business continuity plan, I think, is a plan of 12 months at least. Well, in 12 months, I think we should put together all the things and say, which is the next move. Of course, is 2021.
Thank you, Gonzalo. Petia, would you give us a little bit of an insight to how Kaleido and in Austria in general, what do you think your thoughts are on the business continuity piece?
Yeah, well, I was just really, it was really interesting to listen to you guys as well, because you're touching upon some really important points. So I would just not go where you went. So I would just like do separate points so that we don't repeat each other. But I thought they were great points as well. So we didn't have necessarily a crisis response plan like any other company. Basically, we never thought this could happen. And so it's never in our mind that like we need to have something in place where it will help us through crisis. I think we were forced into remote working. Things have been working out amazing. But I think this also has like sort of eased up. When you have a smaller company, well, maybe that's true for everyone. I think like it's very difficult for employees who don't know how remote would work to ease up and like not be stressed out about this. And I felt that that was the case before. And so now, because it's just, I'm seeing firsthand like how much more relaxed the management is. Like we're basically really trusting each other. So it's working out really well. But George talked about this in detail. So something that is more specific in our case, in terms of operation that was major, and this has been coming for a long time, but particularly in this situation, it sort of like brought it to light, and we basically acted right away. And so it happened that we had the possibility to find the person that we needed for this, but we actually hired a COO to handle operations, and we didn't have someone that handles operations from senior level. And it was like, we had been like thinking about this for a while, because we have the CEO, we have also the CTO, and then I am head of sales and marketing. And like, so we would all step into operations a little bit. So we would overlap with that. But so we needed a central figure that could step in and like provide that leadership that was really missing. And so when this crisis hit, it was really apparent, like the gap that was there of that, figure was even more apparent. And I mean, it's not an easy task to find someone who could be a good fit, especially like for smaller company. And someone who can, you have to get along with the team. You have to have certain types of experience. And so it happened to where that person came to us in the right time, and we were able to hire them faster than we thought we would because of this, because we realized that, we needed someone right away to take charge, and just take the presence of that leadership has been amazing. And he's absolutely great. I don't know how we found him, but he's been amazing. He's really great with communicating with everyone. He's there to provide growth plans. So we're really looking into how we can grow. We realize we need to change some things, even though we're in a position actually that our sales haven't been affected that much. In fact, I've closed so many deals in the past only week even. But this is a very isolated situation. We're a company that provides a tool for a lot of companies that are selling online, basically. And so this entire situation, in the beginning, I was like, oh my God, this is, it looks like it could be something positive for us actually in the long term of business, but you never know. You never know how the market would respond. Maybe people wouldn't want to do anything and freeze. And so that was, the first thing that came to our minds. But fortunately, and so I'm in a very unique position. First of all, 100% of our leads are incoming. So when people come to us, they already love our product. They tell us what their use case is. And so it's just all about like consulting, finding the right way for them to go about enterprise, and just like creating that relationship with them. And so this switching back to, over to clients. So on one hand, suddenly like we had a lot, even more leads of companies that just simply wanted to share their ideas of how they can transition from offline to online. And so in that sense, like our communication transitioned a lot. So like in sales right now, what we're basically doing is just providing a lot of consulting, for example. And what I've been also trying to do is reaching out to also current clients to use this time to actually build relationships. I think this is the perfect time to reach out to your existing customers or leads that you're trying to create a genuine relationship with, which is what we're after, because we realize that those long-term relationships are the ones that we want and to nurture as well. So it's really important. That's a very it's a value that we have that we try to keep. So it's like this time where even if things are stopped, I think it's important to step away from like the general like a sales pitch and like be flexible as well. So we've provided additional ways of adopting our enterprise plan to help startups or other companies that are attempting to survive and to save their business as well, or to add additional business revenue. So it's been actually a really great, amazing experience for me, because on one hand, we are able to provide consultancy for the companies that are trying to switch over to an online way of doing business, being flexible, providing just like also it's just building the relationships with them, reaching out to find out how they're doing, how this is impacting their business, and like genuinely caring about that. And so I feel like that's been really positive, and it's brought us closer together to our customers, to be honest. And then on the customer success side, like we have an amazing customer success manager, and like we work really closely together. And so we've instructed him also to like sort of just have conversations about how people are doing, just make it about that. And so I think it's worked out really amazing for us so far in terms of how we've responded to that side.
Okay, thank you for that, all of you. Just looking at my time, and I'd say that we're just under half an hour here, and I really want to get to some questions. But one thing I just want to chime in through this is, having been with the City of Edmonton and actually built part of the business continuity plans in the past, you're right about one thing, that having that key leadership to take control and drive things through makes a huge difference. And I think the city has done a beautiful job in terms of reacting to others. One thing that I would add to the fact is that you may have a plan, but no one can be fully prepared for what's going to hit. And so you should be able to have a team and a group that's there that can actually pivot, change, and adapt to situations. You could even just throw out that plan, but it's a starting point, and it's a very important piece. And that's one of the biggest understandings that I've had through talking to a lot of businesses over the time. So I'm going to skip through a few questions because I really have some good questions that I want to ask. And I think that's what the audience is also looking to get to. We'll touch a little bit on communication strategies and so on. But really, this is the question that I've been wanting to get to. We've seen a lot of layoffs, whether it's temporary or permanent layoffs. People have taken this as, okay, either businesses are going to crash or we're going to let people go. What has been your organization, or what have you been seeing in your area that essentially has been looking at providing assurances to employees on what their future is going to be? Because this affects them on a financial basis, it affects them on a mental basis as well. What has been your role that you've played and your company has played through these pieces? George, you want to take it off?
Yeah, sure. So, we, again, as a company, we are in a unique position because we are doing really well. Our stock's at an all-time high, primarily because of our solution being targeted to the crisis. However, with all of, with most of our customers going through a tough time, we don't know what's coming up in the next 12 to 24 months, right? So we could very well be going through a really rough period. And so the first step is to essentially be judicious when it comes to operational expenses. So that, every employee has to think about that, right? So before you think, layoffs or whatnot, I think there are things that organizations can do to maybe avoid such a decision. And, some of the things you can do is, first of all, as a company, what can you do to be more more operationally efficient and reduce your overall cost? So that's something to consider. The second aspect is, can we do something short term it ties back to operational expense. Like, for instance, a lot of companies I see are going through this concept of furloughing. So, maybe asking your employees to take a week off or something to reduce, maybe, some of the expenses. So that's something a lot of organizations are employing. Nobody wants to fire people, right? I mean, nobody enjoys doing it, but as a business, sometimes you have to make these decisions. The other aspect that I've seen is, you have to, as any organization, you have to evolve, right? So going through this crisis, if you're not taking a close look at your business and, what your products are, and are there ways to make the product more appealing to the masses in this crisis, thereby improve your revenue? If you're not doing that, you're going to be left behind. I mean, you've seen many, many examples of this, right? Companies who've been at the pinnacle of their success, just, being, kind of taking things easy, and then a newcomer coming and just taking them over. So I think through COVID, I think all businesses have to take another look at their business model and see how they need to evolve to stay competitive, and to essentially maybe find new ways to keep their businesses hot and, keep their employees churning. So, for instance, I think it's pretty obvious that retail is not going to be retail anymore. They have to rethink how they do their business. I mean, I'll give an example, right? I till COVID hit, I would go to a supermarket. Thanks to COVID, I use Instacart. I think moving forward, I don't think I'm going back to a supermarket, but I love the fact that I can just order online. So, that's an example of an industry that needs to evolve. So if I am the grocery store, I should be thinking of ways in which I make my business more appealing to this online shopper. I mean, can my app be better? Can the process be better? Whatever it might be, right? So if you don't do that, some other supermarket chain will come along that's optimized for this and take your business away. So I think that's one aspect that every business has to look at. Even in healthcare, going through a very tough crisis in the U.S. because most of the optional procedures are have stopped. they are also looking at ways. I mean, I was joking to one of my friends, like my physician has never contacted me in all these years. I'm a diabetic, and I would have to beg him to have my test done and get an appointment. All of a sudden, he's actually calling me and saying, "Hey, I noticed that you haven't come in, your medication or whatever. Why don't you come in?" I'm like, wow. So that's another example of businesses realizing that they got to change some things around to kind of evolve. So as far as layoffs, I think before you think about laying off your employees, think about how you can reduce your operational expenses, how you can evolve your business to remain competitive, and think of new ways to attract your opportunities, and maybe define a new market segment, right? So like maybe there are segments where you've done really well. Maybe there are segments that you've never achieved success. Think about how you can go after those segments under the context of COVID. So those are kind of ways to maybe at least delay layoffs. And there's no, I mean, layoffs in some cases are unavoidable. Like if a company goes through 2 or 3 quarters of downturn, I mean, it's something you got to do, right? I mean, but then there are still things that you can try before getting to that stage, and most organizations are, I mean, I'm sure will do that. As far as assurances that are being provided, I think we have what's called a global employee meeting that's once a quarter, and these questions are asked directly. So I think most organizations, what they need to do is their leadership should be front and center, assuring their employees that they have their back. Like in this crisis, what employees need to hear is a sense of assurance, because they're going through a lot of change. There's the financial headaches, there's the children being at home, there's all of this fear and disillusionment that's around them. So regardless of what the future holds, short-term leadership has to ensure that their employees feel like they can rely on their employer, and that they have their backs, and maybe challenge them, right? So like our leadership challenged us to think of new creative ways to remain effective. So in my role, I am a field resource. My primary responsibility is to be in front of executive leadership at customers, right? Unfortunately, with COVID, that is very, very challenging. I mean, I can probably do some things effectively online, but many other things I can't. So I had to think of other ways in which I can contribute to the success of my organization. So, things that I do, I mean, I write a lot of point of view documentation. So industry insights that can be customized for a customer, right? And that it's almost like a takeaway document that I can give to a leader at an organization. So something like that. Or how can I make my virtual meeting more effective? How can you be more effective in whiteboarding? How do you keep it collaborative? So my point being that every employee has a responsibility. I mean, a little bit of fear is a good thing. Like we all need to be a little fearful of our jobs, because if you're fearful of our jobs, we'll figure out ways to be valuable to the organization and be creative. So it's a two-way street, right? The employer has to do everything to assure that they do everything in their power to avoid the layoff and give their employees confidence. But as an employee, you have the responsibility to accept this change, be creative, and come up with new ways to add value to your employer. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, thanks, George. I think the key piece to that was really it's not just one way; it's both ways, and how you, as such, put yourself as being valuable to your organization as well. Gonzalo.
Well, yeah, the first thing I have in mind is how you can split between industries, no? Because, for example, yesterday I was seeing how Airbnb made thousands of layoffs. The good point or the logic of this is that the people that was fired, unless it's a difficult situation, they really know which are the industries, the next time industries that are going to fall down or to need to be laid off, because every one of us thinks that our companies are forever and we are going to be the best employee and all the industries are going to succeed. But when the good times come, that's all good. But when all fall down, you have to think first of your companies. The companies have to make some decisions. For example, in our case, luckily, we could maintain all the 20 positions that we have, but with one warning, just to be very transparent and to say, okay, we have 9 months of fuel just to make the things happen. That's automatically in every people of our team started to think, okay, I have to be 2 times, 3 times more valuable just to go together and work together to achieve this moment. So for example, the quality guy before all this problem is not going to be the same after this, because he knows that with the executive team, we are going to maintain their salary, we're going to maintain that position, but all have to know that we have to be more profitable and more valuable just for this transition. So I think the next moves are going to depend of every industry. In the terms of medium and small size companies, just myself or, for example, Petia's companies, it's very common to think, okay, we are 20 people, so one less is going to be very valuable. It's not the same to lay off 1 people from Uber, that 1 people from U.S.A. or from Calais, because the value of each of us is strategically. So answering and maybe to wrap up all, we should maintain, if we are a small company, a medium company, we should maintain the positions unless we didn't think that they are valuable enough to this niche stage.
Sorry, Petia, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just so much that could be said on the topic. I do agree. So there's just a lot of different ways to look at it as well. And I mean, I have to say from from management, from business operation perspective, yes, you have to be aware of cost, and you have to reevaluate the situation in the sense of, is this product going to be relevant beyond this crisis, for example, because the crisis is going to change things. So, reevaluating how what you're offering, first of all, how is it relevant? Will it be relevant? And that has a lot to do with that kind of a decision. So even if you had to lay off or do some changes, you could always try to not do that, but sort of reposition the person in another position. So, I mean, it's inevitable if you're managing a business that you, at any crisis or any situation, you might have to lay off people. But I think if you have talent that is worth keeping, it's very much worth trying to figure out if this person wants to switch over. Maybe you can offer them another position within the company, but just having good talent is very difficult to come by. And once you come to a management level and you start building teams, you do realize how difficult it is to find very talented, loyal, smart, just overall like mature people that you can also trust. So I think if you have people like this on your team, definitely try to find a way to keep them, even if you had to move them to another position if that position will not be available anymore. So from that perspective, that could be one way to look at it, but do keep that in mind. And then if you, on the other hand, is if you know that your business will continue in the same, in some way, after this crisis hopefully is over, just wait, don't start firing people either. Like if you had to, you could reduce hours, you could offer vacation time, you can offer, I mean, for example, in Austria, it was really great because actually all small businesses were offered, I'm not sure what the exact amount was, but they offered backup for startups to where they can keep their employees with a reduced salary. So they didn't have to go to work, but you could still pay like up to 70% of their salary. So the immediately impacted companies or employees would be events, for example. So I have friends from other companies that they're not going to work, but they're still receiving their salary in the meantime, because their management knows the business will continue, will pick up at some point, and so they don't want to lose this workforce as well. And it's also it's like in Austria, I think in a lot of European countries, that's the good thing about like having a good social system that actually provides this kind of responses. So I think in that sense, this has been handled by the country itself. It's helped out. So look out for those opportunities. Perhaps there's banks that can back you up, but just really, I think, assess what positions are not going to be relevant. Will this position be relevant, but you need to like pause it for a second. So there's a lot of decisions that you have to make from that point of view, but definitely think about keeping the people that you want to keep, for sure. And then from employees' point of view, keep in mind that this is your time to shine, because most employees are not used to doing this. They hate that they have to do it. But if you really, this is a time for every employee to like really step up, show that they're trustable, they're reliable. And so a lot of good things can come out for an employee, because you're making the managerial job so much better, because you're there, you're responsive, you are helping the team. It's really a time to shine. I think any manager would appreciate an employee being that way. So you'll be noticed in that sense.
I know it's a very, this topic is really broad, and I know there's a lot of things that we have ideas. I really just wanted to get to a sense to have people understand what ideas and processes that you guys are putting into place. Kind of wrapping up of quite a few things. I think I want to put this as one of the questions out there is, it's a new era. It's a new era coming in as we're stepping. Just because we're finishing up the wave right now doesn't mean we go back to business as normal. It's a new way of running business. What opportunities do you see arising from this pandemic for your business, the businesses around you? And I really want you to focus on what each of your top 3 focuses would be on this. So, Gonzalo, you want to start us?
Yeah, of course. Well, the first tool or the first new thing that are going to arise from all this situation, in our case, is content generation. We have found a totally disruptive challenge and channel of communicating with our customers. We create this called webinars U.S.A. or U.S.A. webinars, where we can match the audiologists with some experts in the field, totally free. We provide them with these webinars. And for example, we made 3 webinars, and in total we have 1,000 attendees. So we are talking about 1,000 direct target customers. So if we have to do it with another kind of tools, or maybe before COVID, we should take almost 6 months to 1 year to provide or to supply these 1,000 people. So with this new challenge, I think we have to create massive channels to communicate directly with our customers without barriers. For example, in these 3 webinars, we have people from 5 countries in Latin America. So automatically we can create a marketing channel for all Latin America. The second focus we should be is on people. I don't think that it's going to be necessary to return to our our workplace. For example, I'm really considering working from home almost 80% of the time. I think my team, the rest of the team, is going to take the same way. For new hires, for example, if we have to hire a new R&D or a new quality assurance guy, we are not going to find only in Argentina. I think now our campus or our network is going to be worldwide. For example, with the new Harvard's network that we created with the course, I have automatically 400 people that I can ask them if they know some guy from R&D or from quality assurance. And that's a good disrupting challenge for new hiring. The third one, that the focus on the pandemic, is the real value of, and now I'm going to talk about the mobile healthcare, the real value of mobile healthcare nowadays. I think it's going to be the industry that just as in 2008 when, for example, started Airbnb or Uber or Slack, I think the new healthcare companies are going to create the new value. I'm really anxious and excited to see the next Uber of healthcare, or maybe the new Slack of healthcare, or maybe the next Facebook of healthcare, because nowadays it's really possible to connect any professional, any audiologist or any healthcare professional worldwide with any patient. For example, in this third point that I mentioned, I am working with the World Economic Forum, the Global Shaper community, and one of the projects, non-profit projects that we have, is to create a new toolkit to learn and to teach any healthcare professional around the world how they could manage a digital and remote situation. That's are going to, I think, reduce the gap between offer and demand. Automatically, it's going to position companies like us, or maybe new companies that are going to emerge in a new position. So, well, this all positive things that I'm expecting from this transition from COVID. But of course, we should be all prepared for the changes in mindset and the changes in learning process.
Thanks, Gonzalo. Interesting thought around the Uber of health. I really like that comment about we're going to be seeing something different in that realm. Petia.
Yes. So I will just focus on one major thing, actually, that could be of interest. So we actually, this entire crisis showed us how relevant our tool actually is, and how much more even relevant it will be in the upcoming new era. Everything is being affected. I think, there were a lot of businesses obviously online that has been a reality, but I think this crisis has forced everyone to be comfortable with online shopping, with just being online. As you say, Gonzalo, you are planning on staying on working remotely from home. I'm also going to do this. I saw that I'm extremely effective. I think a lot of my colleagues are also going to do it. So, I mean, there's people who never dare to order online. Now it's a reality. So people actually like it. It makes your life a lot easier. I mean, like just being able to call up your doctor and get a diagnosis virtually and not having to wait. I mean, that's huge. That saves us so much time. And so once you realize how much more effective you are going to continue doing things this way. And so in that sense, we realize how much more relevant our basically tool is going to be going forward. And so this is actually, it's an amazing thing for us, because we're actually going to be starting to do outbound sales for the first time. And so we're working out now for the first time a sustaining strategy that we can basically, based on everything we've seen so far, the types of businesses that reach out to us, types of businesses that have reached out to us specifically during crisis. There was a business that was our competitor that went out of business. And so we got actually clients from that. And just like realizing that we're very valuable. And so focusing on reaching out to those industries that we're really going to be helping out is going to be our major focus going forward.
Thank you, Petia. George?
There's a topic I could spend hours talking about, because if you look at each vertical, there's so much to talk about. So I'll focus on three broad themes across all verticals, right? So first and foremost, I think remote work is here to stay. I mean, Petia and Gonzalo, you both said this, and I strongly believe in it. I've believed in this a long, long time, but I think because of COVID, remote work is something, it's going to go mainstream now, whereby a significant chunk of employees are going to work 2 to 3 days at least from home. So as organizations, you have to now look at ways to empower those users, give them the right tools to remain productive and efficient, but also making sure that the enterprise security is taken into account. So like protecting your intellectual property and whatnot. So think about what solutions you're offering your end users and how you can provide a better workspace, for the lack of a better word, for your users, whereby they have what they need to be absolutely productive. So that's one. The second big theme that I see is around businesses needing to be agile and constantly evolving. So you got to reevaluate your business. COVID's introduced new trends. Like every individual is going to change. The way they shop, the way they approach education, the way they approach healthcare, everything's going to change. So as a business, you will have to reevaluate all the things that you thought were your driving factors or your 3-year roadmap, and look at how that needs to change. And you got to do more with less. In other words, get the most out of your employees, reduce operational expenses, and be creative in terms, and take risks, honestly, right? Like, don't be conservative, take bold risks to kind of evolve and find a new niche for how you can grow your business. So that's the second thing. Another aspect, the third aspect that I want to talk about is, what COVID also made everyone realize is how interdependent businesses are, and this global network that we're all, global supply chain that we're all part of, right? So when you think about business continuity, think beyond just getting people to work and stuff. Think about business continuity for your supply chain, or think about how you could reimagine all of those aspects of your business and what all those different interdependencies are. And don't think of business. I think I mentioned this earlier. I mean, business continuity should not be something that you look at in a silo. It is something that you should be thinking about and implementing on a regular basis and testing it out, so that when the unexpected shows up, you're not you don't seem like a deer in the headlights, right? So think of business continuity as something that's of a much higher priority than it was in the past.
Thanks, George. And I think you touched on something which I'll add to my final comments here is what we're seeing is a new world. It's essentially, you said everything changes, but there's interdependencies on things. You're going to see a lot of the retails come on, going from the big box stores to smaller pieces, and especially that affects governments in terms of taxes and revenue resources and those things. So while it's becoming an opportunity for one business, it's also becoming a challenge for somebody else. So actually, this gives me another interesting topic to bring up. One of the sessions is actually to see how governments are going to be trying to relate to the changes that's happening. Even though we are going to be coming out of something right now, the effects of this are long, like it's 12 to 18 months. I think Gonzalo mentioned at least 12 months. I say it beyond that, but I think it's a new way of looking at it. So I know that this topic is a huge topic. It's current, and there's a lot of opportunities here. And I think what I wanted to do with this, with organizing this event, was to show people that it's not doom and gloom all around here. This is actually an opportunity. And we've seen George, Petia, and Gonzalo give us some real insights of how they've taken this as a opportunity to essentially step up and go with things. So I think that's where we want to make sure that every one of you understands that, when things come across as a challenge, sometimes you got to see the silver lining behind it and see that there's opportunities for there. So I'd really like to thank the speakers for taking time out. I know, Petia, it's probably midnight out in Austria right now. Thank you very much for your time out there and being with us today. It was a sensational conversation. I really enjoyed getting to know you all. And I think I still haven't finished my bottle yet, but that's something I'm going to take home pretty much. So thank you very much. The audience, thank you for your participation. I hope you've got a chance to see what organizations are going through. And if you do want to connect with me, give me a shout at alex@nextevolutionventures.ca. I'm happy to help understand your business and help out in any way. I'm just going to give a little bit of a heads up that I'm going to play a video in a little while. It's about a minute long, but essentially it was what intended as was a soft launch for me this has become my first launch. So I'm going to play that video in So that essentially is my video. Essentially, I'm a one-man person right now, but really the whole effect of this is I believe in the community of people. I believe in the community of ideas. I think people have ideas that can solve problems in a more effective way. And essentially, that's what we're building out. It's a very new way of consulting. It's a new way of running a business. It's a new way of connecting with the creative minds that are out there. And while I started off as Edmonton, my first thing is a global show. So it's not just limited to Edmonton, Alberta. So with that, I want to thank every one of you. And we hope to see you in some of our sessions in coming weeks. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. It was
Thank you, everyone.